Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having a good day so far. Let me welcome you again on behalf of the African Society here at Cambridge. I've heard that people had flown in yesterday. It's really great to have all of you here. So I've been given only 10 minutes. I'll try to stick to the time I'd been given. And my talk is going to be about the experiences I've had working in Niger leading up to the research I'm currently working on, and the work that we've been doing as the African Society here in Cambridge. So when I first left home, Niger, a couple of years ago, I was quite shocked as how little the world knew about my country, but also about Africa. And how many times I had to explain that Niger is actually a country and not a province of Nigeria. And that it's in fact the largest country in West Africa. I was also shocked at times that some of the knowledge was almost purposefully chosen to validate initial perceptions. So when you're an African, in a world where many see Africa as a continent, as a basket case, and well, people still wonder how you traveled so far away from Niger. And where recently we're having a conversation, people like Bob Dylan can get a Nobel when Ngugi wa Thiong'o has literally revolutionized an entire field of literature. You cannot be a bystander. I think being a bystander, especially in such privileged spaces, makes you complicit in maintaining the narrative that diminishes an entire continent to a caricature of itself. So 8 years ago, along with a small group of young Africans, we decided we will do our part. And we set the foundation for Harambee Entrepreneur Alliance. The question we asked ourselves was this one: if we young Africans do not attempt to change the face of our continent, then who will? What started then as an idea that many predicted would die down, not just one, two. Actually, I could count the first 50 people we spoke with told us that this is a great idea, but just forget it. What started as that is today a global ecosystem that supports the entrepreneurial aspirations of young Africans in over 30 countries. And the declaration that all our members sign reads, this is the initial group of crazy people that believed in this idea. Yet in the end, the Africa our generation desires can be one. It exists, it is real, it's possible, it's ours. I just had my birthday last week, so I'm a bit older. And in hindsight, this is indeed a bit idealistic. What were we thinking? It is idealistic until you start to see wonderful things happen as a result of the work that we've done. Scholarships started in various universities around the world, including the Harambee Fletcher Scholarship that awards a full scholarship to an African every year in the name of Harambee Entrepreneur Alliance. Fellowships for young Africans in 12 African institutions, including Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, and funding for projects. So what Harambee gave many of us was more valuable than any amount of money. It was the message that ordinary young Africans, some of us from towns that you would never see on a map, can come together and make extraordinary things happen. Yet, as we worked on this venture, as I worked on it for a number of years, I came to realize that there was a big portion of the population in our countries that we weren't able to reach with our actions. I knew at the end of the day that structural changes would be required somehow. It's a big word, but it is true. So it was inspired and driven by the desire to contribute to building my country, Niger, and just be home, really. Eat my mom's food and have my name be called properly. that I returned to Niger. In the words of Chimamanda Adichie, that many of you would know by now, you travel to search and you come back home to find yourself there. So for several years, I dedicated myself to working in rural areas. And it's funny because I have grown up my entire life in Niger, and I thought I knew the narratives of women in rural areas. For those who've grown up on the continent, you know the divide that there is between rural and urban. I thought I already knew their stories, the narratives of low educational outcomes combined with high levels of poverty, and how development programs must act to salvage their livelihoods. But what my experiences working in over 150 villages in Niger, to be precise, 161 villages, showed me was that the ground, as we call it, that these women are anything but helpless. In fact, these women in rural areas are making use of the resources available to them to redefine their lives. They are recreating a new reality for their communities when programs parachuted to fix problems struggle to take roots. So I asked myself, how did the narratives of women in rural areas come to be so covered with inadequacy and helplessness, where in them I saw some of the most enterprising people? So the program I worked on went from being a program with ready-made programs to one that drew on locally led innovations. So what we did was to really get the communities to rethink their own problems for themselves and devise solutions that worked for them. Processes, not just solutions, but the process of getting to a solution. But most importantly, we made sure that the communities talked to, somewhere in that picture, we made sure that clusters of villages talked among themselves to share ideas, and it seemed to work. It didn't solve the entire problems, but it did have serious contribution in some of the communities that I have worked in. This is in a village called Garimbajini, where these women have actually set up a fund, girls' education fund, out of their own, the proceeds of their own, how do you call it in English? Their own income, from their own income. So every year at the end of the rainy season, when they sell some of their produce, they dedicate about 10% of their income to this special fund. And it has been so successful that the number of girls staying in school went up by, I think, 51%. It was really amazing. And what they did was to also share with 10 neighboring communities that have also adopted a similar program. This behind is Furera in one of the neighboring villages to the previous one, who's one of the first director of primary school in the region. I think you can read her quote. She's a very, very strong woman. She's challenged me in a number of ways. So if people like Furera that you see here challenge stereotypes of women living in rural areas, there are some serious challenges. In Niger, where I'm from, the net enrollment at secondary school is less than 16%. That's for boys and girls, much lower for girls. And the percentage of girls completing secondary school is only 20%, and we know why. One of the speakers earlier, Mrs. Saraki, spoke about some of the challenges. We know the challenges. But I think what we understand little, at least I don't, and I've tried to read a lot, I think there's still some gap there, is how some girls, and actually boys, manage to defy the trend when nothing seems to differentiate them from their peers. How and why, in the face of enormous challenges, do some students succeed while others fail? Perhaps if we're able to understand what makes the difference, we might be able to give more students the opportunity to achieve their highest potential. So for me, these experiences working home have begun to reveal to me the true essence of a word called Illimi. I don't know if anyone in the house speaks Hausa. Oh, you do? Oh. So Hausa, Illimi, is a Hausa concept that this is me and Aisha too. Illimi, where is it? Okay. So Illimi is a Hausa concept that my great-grandmother has explained to me as moments where knowledge, humility, and purpose are in harmony in one space. So it is my perpetual quest for Illimi that brought me here to Cambridge University. This is why I'm here. So my presence here at Cambridge is supporting more than an individual. Cambridge is really supporting a dream. And I cannot be more grateful to the people that had invested in making the Cambridge Africa scholarships possible. Professor David Dunn and Dr. Pauline Essa, you are one of the pioneer of this program, and it's incredibly important and timely. I cannot thank you enough. Last year there were just 5 of us, this year it's 10, and hopefully in 50 years I'll look back and say, there are now 100, 500, or there are many, many more. And also my supervisor who cares and who's patiently helping me unravel the complexity around these issues, because they are really complex, Dr. Shalaija Fennell. And so in Cambridge terms, my research looks at the determinant of secondary school completion using sample surveys, large-scale data, and meta-analysis. So I really want to understand how students disrupt a charted trajectory. As we've seen in the graph here, it's pretty clear that a very small number of students make it, but my research wants to focus on those that have broken from that trend and understand how they did it, because I think they're highly understudied. And just like my work in Niger has shown the importance of community to the girls and boys, actually, that managed to break from that trend, so is the case for me here as an African woman working in PhD at the Center of Development Studies. I'm privileged to share the space with 3 other phenomenal African women. I think they're all in the room. They're here to support. Where are they? Yes, Nungari, Taskin, Jolie from Kenya, South Africa, where's Jolie, and Rwanda. These are really great women, and I think it's important when you look at the issues of development that are so multidisciplinary. There's no one clear answer, and everything else is connected. Hence the importance of making sure that I think all these research talk to each other, and that is what we do, and that is what that space provides us space to do. So as I came to Cambridge firmly convinced that I would belong, why shouldn't I? But to be frank, that sense of belonging was shaken in many ways at various moments. Truth be told, when I came here, I was not looking to do anything other than my PhD. And then I was approached by a dear friend of mine. I still remember words from my parents when I first left home in Niger. It was like, remember what's taking you there is studying, and studying alone. Don't get into trouble. So, I did not get into trouble for the most part, but I did more than studying. I think the same values that have inspired my engagement with Harambee Entrepreneur Alliance several years ago drove my involvement with the African Society and with the Africa Together conference. I know from experience here, so this is me speaking about our engagement with the African Society, African students. that students can at least recall, I think, one incident where they questioned their presence here in Cambridge. I think that sense of feeling of what loneliness can be overwhelming. That's why we celebrate every individual graduate as a collective victory here in Cambridge. But more importantly, the role of the African society in this regard is to create alternative spaces where we can discuss contemporary issues of importance to Africa and to create a home away from home for most of our members. This is one of the initiatives that we started last year, and it's ongoing. It's a semi-informal platform where we try and pick a country, get somebody who's a student here, give insight into what's happening and discuss them. And I think at a time when, from Cape Town to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to here in London, prominent institutions and our peers are calling to decolonize the curriculum. Making sure Africa is present in a meaningful way in Cambridge is extremely important. Here, one of the work that we've done, that we try to do on a regular basis, engaging with hopefully what would be the future generation of Cambridge students. These are students coming in from Botswana. I think they're aged 12 to 15. And the biggest of our, I'll try to wrap up quickly. The biggest of our event is the Africa Together Conference, which was at third year this year. Over 300 participants, and we've managed to bring 23 speakers from 15 African countries with all the regions of the continent represented. But to me, Africa Together is not about numbers, really. It's about consolidating a space in Cambridge where Africa and its diaspora can raise questions with the hope that something will change. I think one of the questions this year that resonated with a lot of us and that still rings in my ear, that I hope will resonate in the right places, was asked by Njoki. She's one of the co-founders of the African Society. She said, when will we have a Black African faculty in centers that particularly focus on Africa? I think Africa Together is also about continuing a legacy that visionary students started before us and passed on from generation to generation. I think I will end with a call to the new students, questioning how on earth you landed here in Cambridge. How, when sometimes Cambridge celebrates its most notable alumni with portraits in prominent places, very few, or perhaps none, are of African descent. Let me say this, you belong here. You do. Whatever you're told that pleases you, take it. Whatever you're told that does not please you does not define how the journey ends. Own Cambridge. Frustrate if you must, but make an active effort to be part of writing the new chapters of our university's long history. And I think our time here in Cambridge is so limited, well, unless you overstay, which many do. And really, what I say is that our actions might be or seem small, but we're contributing, I hope, to setting the foundations for the kind of interactions that many of the previous speakers, including the Vice Chancellor, spoke about, the type of cooperation that Cambridge would like to cement with the African continent. Thank you. And yeah.